So, everyone, I made the bold proclamation at the beginning of the year that I was going to read 6 books this month. So, how did I do? Let's find out. Hey, everybody, I'm Nikhil with Shelf-Esteem, and this is my monthly wrap up, or as I like to call it, our read along wrap up. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Nikhil with Shelf-Esteem. I'm a composer, now also a booktuber. You can find my music in The Wheel of Time Season 2, His Dark Materials Season 3, and the newly released psychological horror film, Dead Whisper. So as I mentioned, I'm a composer, that's my day job, but I'm also a booktuber now because, just like all of you, I love books. And I've spent years watching other booktubers, and finally I said, hey, you know what, I'm going to turn the camera on and put the lights on and just speak and see what happens. And I've gotten to meet so many wonderful people like you all. And through this whole kind of experiment, 8-month-long experiment so far, I've gotten a chance to read some great books, hopefully recommend some in turn, and start 4 read-alongs on the channel. Not only that, I decided to maybe read a couple other books, maybe join another read-along, because what's better than 4 read-alongs? 5 read-alongs, of course. So how did I do? Let's kind of dive into some of the books that I read, and some of the things that fell by the wayside, some of the things I'm looking forward to improving next month. So if you like this kind of video, please like and subscribe. Always helps out the channel. Feel free to watch the video on through. Always helps out the YouTube algorithm gods, push it out to the right people. And let's jump on into the books, because we got quite a doozy of a month. So in the end, I had planned to read 6 books. Really 5 books and 1 novella. So what I ended up reading was 2 full-length novels, 1 novella, half of a book, 2/3 of another book, and maybe 1/3 of another book. So let's talk about this smorgasbord of a reading adventure that's happened this month. I did get derailed a little bit because I got sick twice this month. Twice. The first time was when we had evacuated from the fires in LA. So that was a whole nother fiasco that kind of took a few days out of the time, of course, as we were trying to escape the flames and take the cats with us to Vegas, where my wife's family lives. Her and an uncle are there, so they graciously let us stay there. But then, of course, that knocked a few days off the schedule. And then I got sick then, and I was basically bedridden for 4 or 5 days. And just this past weekend, I got sick yet again, because this is how 2025 is starting off. So definitely a shorter month for reading, but it was a focused month for the times I got to read. So let's dive into those books. So the first thing I will mention is I tried so hard, and I was so excited to read more of this than I got a chance to read this month, and that was The Dragon Bone Chair, Tad Williams, the first book of the Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn trilogy. Now, I'd heard great things about this because George R.R. Martin mentions that this was a big influence for Game of Thrones. So, hey, Dragon Bone Chair, Game of Thrones, 2 different chairs. 2 different stories. I really wanted to check this out. And Josh from Red Fury Books, Joanna from Joanna Reads, and Matt from Matt on Books have a Fireside Discord channel. They've been doing a read-along where they read one of these every month. And then kind of the last one is so massive, they split it in 2 months. So presumably I was going to read this with them, but I really only got maybe 100 pages in. So I didn't get very far, but I absolutely love this so far. I think Simon's character is very kind of scatterbrained, youthful, kid, very naive, has a lust for adventure. I really like his character and kind of how he's annoying some of the people at the Castle Hayholt. And I can just see this adventure brimming on the horizon, but nothing huge has happened yet. But, I love Tad Williams. I've read one of his other land books, and I'm like, as soon as I read that, I'm like, I'm going to read everything by Tad Williams one day. And so I was going to, read more of this and then join them for that read along. I think it's not to be this time, but I will be reading this in February and just kind of carrying over whatever I didn't finish this past month, because, that's the beauty of books, is there's so many and so little time, right? We always want to read more books, and sometimes you just don't hit all your goals, but it's all about keeping it fun, and I would never want to rush a masterpiece such as this. So we'll be reading this a little bit in February as well, just kind of slow rolling it a little bit. But let's talk about one on a lighter note, something I actually completed this month, and that was the first one. Actually, let's talk about the novella, which was The Fall. This was the prequel novella of Ryan Cahill's The Bound and the Broken series. Now, I'd heard this was a great place to start if you want to just dive right in and not have a slow burn, which if you wanted to start on a slow burn, you could start the first official novel of Blood and Fire. But I felt like, I have all this other ambitious reads this month. I want to kind of jump right in, get a nice little 100-pager, to just action-packed fantasy, right? I gotta say, I loved it, I felt like Ryan Cahill immediately makes you dive into the story and actually care about the characters, some of which only have a few pages of page time before they exit the story stage. So I was very excited because I never felt like there was a dull moment in that novella. It immediately thrusts you into the action. So I'm actually very excited for what's to come in the series, and I've heard the books continue to get better. So I'm excited to see how I feel about it. But gotta say, The Fall, absolute winner for me. Next one that I read that was a complete novel that I read is part of our official channel read-along, which it's not too late. If you want to join now, you can join us in the Discord. You can join us on the FABLE app, where we're going chapter by chapter and also section by section, respectively, on those two platforms. So you can join us. Free to join. Anybody can join. And right now we are, I think, 43 strong that are reading this all together. So really nice to have everybody tackle the 10 very big books. Of course, the Malazan series by Steven Erikson, or Malazan, whichever you want to call it, tomato. I've been wanting to read these for a while. I started reading them back in Mike's Book Reviews, was doing a channel read long. I got about 2 1/4 books deep. And then I had to bow out because I just didn't have the time. And I was honestly not as well versed in fantasy at the time. So I didn't remember very much of this book. So I was curious to see how I'd feel about it. And I gotta say, I'm so glad that I'm reading it now as opposed to, 4 years ago when I originally read it, because I understand so much more about the vernacular and kind of Steven Erikson's approach to just throwing you in and saying, hey, you may see characters do things that seem out of character for them, because you just don't quite have the full context of this thing yet. It's going to start to unfold and more pieces are going to fit as the books progress. So even within this book, I felt like there was a character that kind of attacked another character. I'm going to keep this completely spoiler free, but there was a character that attacked another character, and I felt like, wait a minute, weren't they on the same side? Why would this person do this? And then as things progress, you start to realize, there's some machinations going on in the background. Not everything is what it seems, right? So this ended up being a runaway hit for me. I just really loved it. And this is supposed to be the worst Malazan book of the series. From a lot of people, they say that. So if this is the worst that this series has to offer, I know I'm going to love this ride. So we're going to be reading Dead House Gates in February. And then we're going to be reading Memories of Ice, the 3rd book, in March, and then taking a month break. So plenty of opportunities and month breaks for you to catch up if you so choose. So no rush. This is all about keeping it fun and keeping it about the books. So this was the next one I completed. The third one that I completed fully is Speaks the Nightbird, Book 1 of the Matthew Corbett series by Robert McCammon, one of my favorite authors currently writing today. He recently released Leviathan, which was the 10th and final book of the series, I think a couple months ago or something. So I figured this was a good time to start Matthew Corbett, and what better way to do that than to start with some new Booktube friends, right? So we, a bunch of us are reading this together. And I'm actually talking to Cliff about from Cliff's Dark Gems about doing a little panel discussion or something about this book, because we both really enjoyed it, and he loves Robert McCammon as much as I do. So excited to kind of figure out the details for that, and we'll leave a community post when we figure out exactly how we're going to do that. But long story short, this was an 800 something page book, and there were very few dull moments in it. I felt like Robert McCammon is just really good at taking characters and making them believable, and making you care about each one. Like there are books that fly by me sometimes where you remember the main events, the main plot points. A few days go by and you kind of forget everything else, right? I never felt like this with this. And even the minor characters that appear for a few pages at a time, you really kind of get to understand them, because he's good at really showing the messy sides of these characters in a way that Stephen King would do. So a murder mystery, kind of a witch hunt kind of a thing, historical fiction set in 1699. Matthew Corbett's kind of this private investigator / clerk for a magistrate. Really fantastic. And we're excited to read Queen of Bedlam in February. So really glad I read this, and glad I got to read this with you all. And yeah, we're going to figure out a time to do a more in-depth analysis discussion of this one. But what a fantastic read this was. Now, this one, I'm about 2/3 of the way in as of this taping, but by the time you see this video, it's very possible I'll finish it because I've been enjoying it that much. And this is no small feat because this book is both beautiful, dense. It makes you kind of sit there and work for the nuggets that are contained within, but it is also a book that you never want to fight, you never want to struggle with. It's a book that requires surrender and patience and kind of silence, silencing your mind and allowing the words to flow through you. I don't know if that sounds crazy to you, but I know for me, like, it almost puts me in a meditative trance state when I'm reading it. The book I'm talking about is Jenny Wirtz's Cursed of the Mistwraith, book 1 of her Wars of Light and Shadow series. By meditative, I mean the prose is so gorgeous. I've mentioned this before in other videos. I'm sure most people who read this can attest to the fact Jenny Wirtz's prose is some of the most unique in that you kind of have to work for it in order to really kind of peel back the layers and see the subtlety and the nuances of the characters, kind of the foreshadowing she places in various chapters in the book of things that happen a few chapters later, and you kind of start to see the threads weave together. That's one thing I love about her books. I also love that the way she writes actually makes you have to slow down. Because, when we want to read a book, we get excited about a book, we love the characters, automatically we're going to start reading faster. The problem with that can be, I know I struggle with this, let me know in the comments if you do, but I know for me, I struggle with this, is sometimes I get so carried away, I read through it way too fast. And then I don't get as much out of it as I could, potentially, right? So Jenny Wirtz makes me stop and kind of makes me digest. And I am so grateful for that because it makes the characters take on, more deeper meaning. So she weaves subtlety in Erathon's character and Lyseer's character, the two half-brothers who represent the light and the shadow. And I really love how their relationship is evolving throughout this book. I love their encounters with the mist itself, the Mistwraith itself, and kind of the fellowship. And there's so many throwbacks to traditional fantasy, but it's also doing its own thing entirely. And I really admire Jenny for her ambitious, kind of setting up this world that she's trying to set up. And it never feels like there's info dumping. It just feels very much like a subtle flow. And I get in a flow state when I'm reading this book, but at the same time I have to slow down and catch myself so I'm not missing anything, because every chapter really has vital information. You could feel that even in the first book, which is cool. Like, I've read The Wheel of Time, right? And this kind of, it makes me feel that kind of a fantasy in some ways. I don't know what it is about it. And, I don't have maybe as much experience reading fantasy as maybe some other people who are watching this channel. So perhaps you could enlighten me. But I think one thing I really love about this is the prose is still direct while being very dense at the same time, if that makes sense. It is flowery. It's beautiful, but it's not taking you away from the point at any point in the story. So I gotta say, I'm so glad I'm reading this. I'm glad I'm taking my time with this. This is one, unfortunately, I could not finish by January 31st, I think, or it might be February 1st by the time I post this, but I might be close to the finish line at the very least. So it'll be a day or two over kind of what I'd planned on doing, but I'm glad I'm taking the time to read this and do it right. So really enjoying this, and we'll do a proper review once I finish as well. And the last book that I'm about halfway through right now is by Sean Bobby Kerr, his debut fantasy novel. He sent this to me on Kindle, and I was just so excited to receive it because, I know what it's like as a creative to put something out there and, putting your first stuff out there as well. And so I was very honored that he asked me to be among the readers to read this, right as it was being released. And I have been really enjoying the journey so far. I feel like it has that perfect blend of whimsical adventure that I really like. It's got a sense of humor and a sensibility about it from the very beginning that I really enjoyed. There's a lightheartedness, but at the same time, you feel almost a slice of life converging with this darkness. So it never feels one or the other at any given point. It doesn't feel bleak. It doesn't feel overly whimsical. But yeah, I'm really enjoying the journey, and I feel like it's actually a really nice juxtaposition to Wars of Light and Shadow, which is a very different kind of fantasy. So I'm going to save my thoughts for the end, but I want to say, Sean, I'm really enjoying this book, man. Thank you so much for sending it to me, and I hope you all will check it out as well. I'm leaving the link in the description, as with all these other books. So that's been my kind of read-along wrap-up. I'm very excited about the next month. I think some of these little, loose ends will carry on a couple days. So am I going to meet my next goals? We shall see. But how was your month, everybody? Did you have a good reading month? Did you read some of these books with me? I know I got a chance to chat with a bunch of you in Discord and Fable as well. I would love to know your experiences about any of these books if you got a chance to read them along with me. Leave it in the comments. Leave it in the Discord, anywhere you so choose. But I'm just so grateful for you all for being along this journey with me. And I think we're going to read some good books this month, this coming month, and the rest of this year. I can just feel it. I feel like the read-alongs are going to be great. And there's going to be some other soft read-alongs, of other standalone books that people have expressed interest in jumping along with. So I will open up channels on the Discord. So hint, hint, if you haven't joined the Discord, there's always room for one more. So feel free to join us. Feel free to participate as much or as little as you'd like. So anyways, I'm Nikhil with Shelf-Esteem. Please like and subscribe. Always appreciate that. Appreciate you guys. Be good to yourselves. Be good to each other as always. I will see you on the next video. Take care.